In this video, I'm going to walk you through the SecureMetrics risk register template. And I'm going to go through all of the different charts and graphs and functionality that we actually have in this template. This is assuming that you've already got your actual risk register Excel version filled out, you've got it hosted, you've connected in your data to the app. If you haven't done that already and you're trying to figure that out, definitely check out our playlists on YouTube. We have playlists for actually leveraging the Excel template for the risk register and getting it into a hosting spot. And then we also have playlists on how to actually connect and configure the application into those sources. But today we're going to actually dig into the actual application. The first thing I want to point out is we have a top nav bar up here where there's four distinct tabs. There's the risk dashboard tab, which is where we have charts and dashboards for you to get a quick view of the actual risk information in the risk register. We have the risk reduction tab, which will show us some risk metrics over time. We can collect various dates in the actual risk register. And so this can kind of help us get a little bit of an understanding of how this risk register is changing over time. We have the actual risk register tab, which is very similar to if you were looking at it in Excel. And so this will let us filter against the actual register and see the raw risks in that register. And then the last one is a resources tab. This has links to different tutorials and resources, probably the video you're watching right now, you might have gotten to off of that resources tab. And then the last one is a purchase license button. This will take you to the license purchase page. If you already have a license, there's no need to do that. So let's start with the risk dashboard. The first thing I want to point out is we have these filters over here. And so if I filter on risk category, for example, here, and I want to look at asset management, this filter is going to apply to every visual, not just on this tab, but every tab. And so that means if you want to start filtering here and then pop over to the risk register to look at the actual underlying risks, all of the filters across the entire PowerBI app are connected. And so definitely keep that in mind. If I hop over to the risk register and I'm saying, where are all my risks? My filters are global across the application. On our filters, we can filter by risk category. And so these are the custom categories that folks can put in there. You can categorize however you want. I have some examples here that may or may not make sense for your organization, which we can filter on. The risk owner. Ideally, this is an individual. However, if you really want to put a team there for some reason, you can do that. I wouldn't recommend that. The risk owner should always be an individual who owns the risk, in my opinion. And if anyone can tell me where these names are from in the comments or on my LinkedIn page, would love to know if anyone recognizes some of those names. So we can filter on risk owners. Let's look at Daenerys Targaryen and see what risks she owns. The next one we can filter on is risk status. You can set different risk statuses. In the sample data, we only have a status of open or closed, open being when we have the risk open, closed being we've closed that risk. It is not set in stone on if it's open or closed. And so feel free, if you need to add a different status in there, you can go ahead and do that. But if we wanted to filter on only closed, we can go ahead and do that, or vice versa, or any risk status. We also have a section in the risk register, if you'd like to use it, where you can put the cost of mitigations for that specific risk. You can filter by default. It'll go from this is the lowest cost of mitigations we have associated. This is the highest. These aren't real examples, just kind of sample data there. But you can go ahead and narrow in on the different cost of mitigations if you would like. We then have several dates here. We have date open, date last updated, decision date, risk response. This is a between, so you can go ahead and select the start date and the end date there. really go through the charts here, prominent center, of course, is our risk matrix. And you may notice we have some buttons up here, right? We have inherent, we have residual, and we have target. So in the risk register, you're able to set the inherent probability, the inherent impact, the residual probability, the residual impact, the target probability, and the target impact. The probability and impact are both on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being rare for probability and almost certain at 5, and then for impact, 1 being insignificant and 5 being severe. So this template does use a 5 risk matrix. Depending on how you've assigned the probability and impact values is where it's going to fall on the risk matrix, right? So it is also going to count the number of risks in each category. So for example, based on our current filters, which is is default, we have 4 risks that are likely and have major impact. We have 1 risk that is unlikely to occur but has severe impact. And then the risk matrix is also color coded, and this relates to the different kind of quantitative. So we can see up here, green equals low, yellow is medium, orange is high, and red is critical. And qualitative, I mean, not quantitative. So this is our risk matrix. The other thing I'll let you know is you can filter on these. It's not apparent that it's being filtered, so keep that in mind, outside of the fact that we have some filter slices going on here. But in this case, I'm only looking at those 4. I can click on it again to reset it. If I want to look at just this 1 risk, I can click on that and I'll filter all the graphics on this page against that risk matrix. Now you'll notice right here we're looking at the inherent risk. So this is how it's laid out, an inherent risk. We can actually switch that and look at our risk matrix from inherent, residual, or target. You'll notice there's also inherent, residual, target on this little graphic here. These are actually linked. So if I click residual here, it'll actually update both charts. If I click it here, it'll update the same charts. But you can click it on either one. So let's look at residual here. And here we can see is our residual, and then let's look at target. Here's where our target risk matrix looks like, and then we'll go back to inherent. Now we have a count of risk by risk status. So this is just looking at how many risks are in the different status. We have 6 that are closed and 8 that are open. This is looking at how many risks by the different compensating control status. And so we have a spot where you can mark if they have compensating controls. At this point, we don't go deep into what those controls are. But if there's no compensating controls associated with it, you can put none, you can put partial, you can put full, and it'll break that down. We can look at it by the risk response type. So are we mitigating this risk? Are we transferring it? Are we avoiding it? Are we accepting it? Etc. Here we can look at the total risk priority by the risk category. So how do we calculate risk priority? It's a really simple calculation, and really what it is the probability on that 1 to 5 scale multiplied by the impact on a 1 to 5 scale. We're also graphing both the inherent, residual, and target risk, and this is across those different categories. And these are the categories that, when you set up that Excel risk register, you can choose whatever category schema you want, and we can visualize the total risk across that. And so as an example, maybe the total risk is really high, but there's only 2 risks in there. We have another category that has 5 risks. That's more risks in there, but there's less actual risk based off of the probability and impact of those risks in that category. Going down here, we can look at the risks by risk owner. And so similar thing here, where we're looking at the inherent risk, the residual risk, and the target risk. And we are looking at the total risk being the risk probability times the risk impact. And then the last chart here on the dashboard is risk responses by risk category. And so what this will do is it'll put all of our risk categories here on the left. It'll put our risk responses, so mitigate, avoid, transfer, accept, on the right. And then it'll show us how our risk decisions were broken out. So for example, here's a great one, is our operational and infrastructure risks. We can see part of that risk we mitigated, and then part of that we actually accepted out of that category. We can see our endpoint security risks we mitigated. The important thing to know here, which is noted right here, is that the stream size is not the number of risks, but it is actually using the total inherent risk, which is that risk probability times risk impact. So that is the risk dashboard. Let's go ahead and hop over into the risk reduction tab. And this is really going to graph out that total risk. Again, same formula, right, where we're multiplying the probability times the impact. And then we're going to visualize it across various risk decision dates. We're going to look at it across when the risk was actually opened, so the open date. And we can see we have the residual, we have the inherent risk, we have the target risk. And so we can see our residual risk is pretty close to our target risk, based on when they were open. And we can actually see how much risk reduction we've had based on that gap. We can look at it across the risk decision dates. So what were the dates when the actual risk decisions were made? And then this isn't a great sample data, so I'll probably update this. But showing risk by the risk response due dates. The reason we're only seeing points here is every risk in the sample data has the actual same due date assigned. And then the last one here is actually interesting. This is looking at using the cost of mitigations column and breaking up, hey, what are our cost of mitigations across our different risk decisions? And so we can see for risk we chose to mitigate, we have 54,000, 10,000, 5,000, 4,000, and then our total, which is 73,000. Again, we have filters here on this page, and these filters are linked to the risk dashboard and the risk register. Finally, let's head over to the risk register, and this is where we can look at our raw data here. Some of the columns, right? We have our risk ID, our date opened, our date last updated, our risk status. By default, this does have icons for both open and closed. Closed being a check mark, open being a yellow exclamation point. We have our description, our category, our risk owner, and then we have our inherent risk probability and impact. These do have little icons there. The risk priority, so the priority being the probability times the impact. Same thing here for target, risk, or risk response type, risk response controls, due date, cost of mitigations, compensating controls. Here's our residual information, and then some of our notes here. And then again, we can filter across the board on this risk register. So if we want to look for all of the risks that Brian Stark owns, we can take a look here. He owns this one, and we can see his name right there. So those are the three main tabs in the Power BI Risk Register app by SecureMetrics. Hope this is helpful, and can't wait for you to get this set up and start having an awesome interface to work with your Excel-based risk register.